Hey, anyone who's watching this, how's it going? I just discovered a neat little trick that I thought I'd share with whoever finds this video. So, we're gonna go into Photoshop and start with a blank file. Make it the size of the video you're working with. Or, honestly, just high definition is a good range to start. 1920 pixels wide by 1080 tall. Resolution, I'd put around 250. That seems about right. Alright, so we're going to be making lens flares without the optical flares plugin from Video Copilot, or maybe without even After Effects. You don't have After Effects. And it's pretty easy, and if you do it right, you can get some pretty cool effects. Alright, so we're gonna go, honestly, it needs to be a little lighter than that. Just like a really light, whatever color you want. Blue is a good one. Blue will match just about any light, and you can always color grade it with whatever you're editing this with. Whatever your video editor is, I mean. And we'll start with the rectangle tool just to get a nice anamorphic style line, if that's the kind of look you're after. And so we've got just this line. And we're going to start by blurring it. And really, everything I do, you don't have to follow exactly in this video. Basically, all you're really doing is just layering a bunch of things and blurring it and making it bright. And as long as you have a solid black background, you can mask and screen. Then it'll work out pretty well. Alright. So we just got that line now, and just get any ellipse tool. Get as close to the center as you can. And make an oval shape type deal. And we're going to blur that. That's about right. And we're going to duplicate this line a few times. And if you just like duplicate everything and then blur it in different ways, that's a good way to go about it too. The blur kind of looks like a light glare coming off it if you do it right. It gives it more of a glow. And I'm going to blur this one a bit more. Doesn't really show up all too well. I'm going to go ahead and make the background black, which you're going to have to anyway if you want to mask it out. I'm going to go ahead and do that so I can see how it's going to end up a little better. The shape, no, new layer. New layer, then add the black and make the layer at the very bottom. There you go. So this is where we're at. We've got a few of these layers blurred. And we've got this thing, which I'm going to go ahead and duplicate. And we're going to blur this layer even more with motion blur. I guess that works. And now here's the important part, and there's a few ways of going about this. You can either go to lighting effects, change it to Omni, make it really bright in the middle, like so, or you can just go to lens flare and put one right in the middle, bring up the brightness a lot. 105 prime will work best for this just because it's a very neutral, bright color. It has a lot of ambience to it. ahead and make another rectangle shape, a little bit bigger. And gotta make that thing very light blue, a little bit lighter. Alright, there we go. And now, add some blur, motion blur. Now you want to be careful of not letting it go off the screen in either direction. It has to stop before the screen so it fades out, because if it goes off the screen when you put it in your compositing or editing program, it'll just look like a line. It'll look like this square shape. Same goes for light. If you add a lens flare behind this, which is a really good thing to do, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Adds a lot of life to it. You just have to make sure that the light doesn't carry off the image, because then there will be a visible line that you'll have to fix. And it's not that big a deal. You can just add Gaussian blur to the whole picture, but it's still kind of a pain. Like, see, that wouldn't work because the light trails off it, so there'd be a visible line. So you're gonna want to go to where light doesn't trail off it. That will probably work. Yeah, it's close enough. And honestly, this lens flare isn't really working out, but there's no definite rules that I've discovered to making these. Just a lot of light, a lot of blur. I have a few pretty good ones we're going to go ahead and work with, because I think you get the general idea of this. Like I said, there's not really a definitive way to make these. I pretty much just played around with it for a while, blurring it and making bright light sources in the middle, extending out until I got something I wanted. So we're going to skip right ahead to After Effects. And I'm going to get a lens flare that I already made, using the same techniques, just in a different way. And I guess we'll go with this one. Alright, so here's one I made in Photoshop. And this one looks pretty good. It's probably one of the better looking ones I've made. It's the most realistic, you could say. So I found a good video from a race using the GoPro. And the GoPro usually puts out a little bit of a flare in the first place, but I guess it really didn't this time. So we're going to go ahead and bring in my flare, the blending mode to add, put it over where you want it, and this lens flare isn't too extreme, but you usually get a little bit more of an extreme flare. But there you go. Really simple. Not exactly to the extent of video copilots. What's it called? Optical flares, but you know, I've been there. You don't want to spend the money on that kind of crap, especially for like one thing. And of course, you can motion track this to make it fit. Right now, of course, I just like set it there, but it's pretty easy to motion track it to make it fit. And you can have different flares for different scenarios. And then pour a different flare. Come on. Alright. I've got this neutral flare. I've got this very unneutral flare I made, but it looks kind of cool. And I call the lens flare blue. This one we're also going to add, and you get kind of the anamorphic streak type look. rid of that one. Wish the sky wasn't so white and blue so he'd show up. And anyway, that's just kind of the gist of it. Of course, you can motion track it and make it fit, and it works a little better. And you can always just go and color correct them. Like, let's say I want a really yellow one for the sun. Make the inside, or not the inside, the high tones yellow, the mids white or orange or whatever you feel like. Just play with it till you get something you like, you know. Wish I could find a better video. But it's winter where I'm at and all the clouds are covered up, or else I'd go outside and just film the sun. I guess this gives you enough of an example though. Alright, so now we're in Sonyvegas, and I found a much better example video. Grab one of my flares, go to effects, and we're going to mask it. Right there. Mask generator. Set it by luminance. And see, that's the issue I was talking about, the visible line. And we'll get to that in a second. We're just going to put over the light real quick. And to fix the line, I'm just going to add some Gaussian blur to the whole thing. That didn't work at all. It's kind of a pain to fix in Vegas, really. In After Effects, it's pretty simple, because you can just mask that area out and feather it. So I can't really think of how to do this in Vegas right now. I'm sure you guys could figure something out. Just don't do it in Photoshop in the first place. No worries. So you have this, and it's a little bit more of a pain to track in Sonyvegas, just because you have to go frame by frame with the cropping thing or the motion tracker right there. It doesn't really have a way to lock and follow like After Effects does. And to really get the look that you're looking for, you can go to color corrector, play with it a bit to get the different colors. The lows you can go crazy with. Usually this is where you get all the cool, weird color grades. In the mids you want to stick a little closer to the middle, and the highs you want to stick really close to white. You want to, if you're going to change the bright center, you want to do it very little. Otherwise, it loses its effect like that. It doesn't look much like a lens flare anymore. It just kind of looks like a weird thing you added. But with the white center, it kind of retains its effect of being a lens flare. So we're going to go with that because that looks kind of cool. Now, another step that'll help a lot is literally just adding a lens flare in your compositing or editing program. So now you're thinking, what was the point of making a lens flare in Photoshop if we're just going to add one in? Well, it's because you can't add a lens flare like that at all. And we're not going to use this whole thing. We're going to look for a version that I like. I guess that one will work. Change the perspective so you get mostly that kind of stuff. Bring down the intensity. We want it to be there, but not really as extreme. Tint it the same shade so it follows your pattern that you're going with. And you can move it out like that. And you still have a little bit of that in the corner there, so you just look for a spot that fits, really. I guess that works. So I mean, that looks pretty cool. Here's before that and that, and that's a pretty boring shot, really. I mean, especially looks nasty because I was using my subpar camera, but you know, in general, it's a pretty boring shot. And then you can add this stuff in, and if done correctly, like, you can definitely overkill it. In fact, I think this was overkill in this video. I probably should have been a little more subtle, but I mean, I think it adds some life to it. Adds a little bit of professionality if done right. And if you don't feel like spending $100+ or whatever it was, I think it was about $100 on Video Copilot's optical flares, and you just like want one part in your video where it's on a tripod and the sun is in the distance, you can add a flare like this and it'll really spice it up.